We hear her, she's here. That gets distracted.
Yeah.
Like two. Okay, we're live and.
It's this.
Let's stop our paper factory recycling the mess.
All right, do we simply have our?
Just speak up.
Are we saving this one?
Recording the cloud.
Thank you. Okay, being that it's 6 o'clock, we'll call this finance committee meeting to order. I appreciate everyone showing up today to help if we have questions. Since we'll be working on the final budget number for next school year.
I appreciate it being here as well. Summer started and I think the administrators got a email from me requesting presence because some of the questions I can't specifically answer, and there's if it's impact on a certain department or a certain school. They need their best to answer right on the spot. We know we'll put out a few with a recommendation at some point, hopefully tonight for next Thursday. So we have something to vote on. And I just appreciate everyone's time as summer started, but I think we just help clear questions with people here. If they're not here, it's not because they don't want to be. They may have already had a day, or but we've got a great team here today to help answer some of those questions.
Yep, thanks, everyone. Appreciate that. All right, so first off, if we could have an approval of the May 20, 2024 minutes.
Motion.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to new business, Hereford alarm system upgrade. Mr. Howard, I saw you back there somewhere. There you are. I knew you were back there. Just make sure you speak up because Peg's on the line here.
Yes, this is for the electronic health items. Therefore, same people we get them all for the system with the phone lines. Instead of being a phone line, it's actually going to be to where it's cellular. So God forbid, what this does is if we have a fire, active shooter, or burglar, whatever you want to call it, it gets dispatched to the Bethlehem Center, and they will dispatch the cops and find them. Right now, if anything will happen, unfortunately, the bell was just ringing. That would be bad.
It has to go all the way to Bethlehem.
Well, no, Bethlehem is where their call center is.
Oh, okay. Okay, scared me for a minute there. Like, oh my gosh.
I don't want us to go ahead and
Okay.
It's a burglar alarm, though, Mr. Howard. It's not the panic alarm.
Thank you.
It's a burglar.
Thank you. Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on that? Do we have a price on that?
Yes, 4,400.
That's right, it's so burden. It's been a long.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's for next year's budget?
Yes.
Okay. And is it in your budget?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yeah,
checking.
I talk about the big thing.
Okay. All right, just checking. All right, while you're, anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Next would be the RFP for our district trash services. So while you're up.
We'll still continue that with public services. We were able to get it cheaper. Me and Drew worked together. We did get it cheaper than going through the MCIU, which is the Bucks County one. They were doing 12–13% more on the ticket item to where we were able to keep our prices exactly pretty much what we had. Little bit increase, but not what they got.
That's a lot.
Not what they got.
Yeah, so the bid with the MCIU came in for 3 years total, $113,713. And with just Craig going out there and calling them, we got our own 3-year proposal, was $81,584. So saved $32,000 by basically doing it ourselves, getting the quotes ourselves and not going through the IU bid.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, both of those.
Yes, thank you.
All right, any questions on that?
So both of those items, their plan is to add it to the Moshe agenda next week, Drew?
Yeah.
Both of those,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
it's coming out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the next, the photography request for proposal for 24-25 through 26-27. What have we got?
So, a lot of kudos and thanks goes to Alexis, because she sort of, she kind of took this on and spearheaded the whole thing, but, her and I worked together. Were, what we thought, we wanted to talk a little bit more with the companies. And the one that we're recommending is Christmas City Studio. So it's the same company that we've had. But in kind of talking with them, we were able to, sort of improve the process moving forward. So Alexis was there, she kind of talked about, the quality of the pictures and sort of scheduling things that maybe some issues that we had over the last couple of years, so it was great to sit down and work with them. I would say the prices for for our parents of our students are comparable with any of the proposals that we received. They were all very, very similar, so, that wasn't really the deciding factor. What was the deciding factor was, our experience with Christmas City. They also are throwing in 2 ID card printers. I know we have one of them over there in HR that we don't know if we ever paid for it or if they provided it, but it's pretty old. So they're gonna throw that in at no cost. They're gonna throw in the consumables for that printer over the 3 years at no cost. They do our badge this year, and on the back, they print the standard response protocol. We were being charged 50 cents for each one of these on every ID, but they're gonna throw that in for free. So we were able to get what I think is a better deal than what we've had over the last 3 years.
Excellent.
So that's who we're recommending to you, and hopefully you'll recommend to the full board on the 20th.
Okay,
For how long?
3 years.
there it is.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
And to be clear from our last meeting, this is not something we pay for. This is something we choose the company. We charge the parents for the packet, or the Christmas City charges the parents for the package, and we just choose the company that does that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with Christmas City.
Yeah, me too. Steve,
Yep.
Leah? Good with that? Okay. Good deal. All right. Okay, 23-24 budgetary transfers.
Yeah, so we'll need a motion on the 20th, to just say, when our auditors go through the audit and they sort of look at, maybe this line was over, but this line was under, and they will make the budgetary transfers for us. But we need the board to approve and give them authority that when they go through the audit, they'll make those budgetary transfers. It's an every year kind of motion that we should have, on the June school board agenda, but I just wanted to give you a heads up before you see it on the June 20th agenda.
Okay, and this is different than when we used to choose to make a budgetary. reserve.
Yeah,
All right.
because they're gonna go through the audit, they're gonna, we'll have adjustments for them, Megan will be booking all kinds of things that are coming in that have to go back to, well, it'll go back to this year, but we'll be doing it in July and August, and then when they're done with their audit in August, they'll take a look at all the budgetary transfers that are needed, and then they'll just make them.
Okay.
Well, they'll give them to us to enter, but.
This is just giving them permission to do it.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay, sorry, I'm writing a lot of notes. Okay, all right, we move on then to commitment of fund balance for capital projects as required by GASB 54.
Yeah, so not that I'm expecting that we'll have. So if you end the year and you have some money left over and you want to put it in, so we do have a committed fund balance. If you want to put money in there, you have to, according to GASB 54, show your intent before the year end, that you will do that if you have money there left over. I don't anticipate that we'll have that, but this is just kind of one of those things that if you don't do it, you could, kick yourself for not doing it. If you do it, there's no harm, no foul, nothing like that. So we should have a motion on the June 20th agenda that if there is leftover funds at the end of the year and the board chooses to commit it into the committed fund balance, you really have to show your intent prior to the year end.
Just for clarification for people, in the audience, the committed fund balances for designated projects that we have coming up, such as,
Fairfield.
I don't want to say
Pick
that,
one.
but yes, you know, maintenance, things like that, that we were planning for. The Giza project, things like that. So anything that can be used to do repairs and maintenance for the facilities around here.
And you're not expecting any this year, or it might not be a lot.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, not like in prior years. where it
Not like
was
in prior-
4 or 5 million.
Correct, yeah, I'm not anticipating that. I mean, I went back through and looked and updated the projection for how we're gonna finish the year. And I'm still showing, over in expenditures for this year. By anywhere from, $3 to $4 million in expenditures that are over. So I would not anticipate. Now I know some of our revenues are higher, we talked about that at our last finance meeting. But I don't know if they're gonna
Cover it.
cover that. So I have a feeling that in the end, the board approved a budget for 23-24 that used 1.4 million of fund balance. I would anticipate that's about where we're gonna land, but that I don't know for certain.
Do we, by June 20th, do we need to know what project we would want to put that money into? Is that what you're saying?
No,
We just need to know that we do
Just that
want to
you-
commit it
yeah,
somewhere.
so then after the year end, you can, and the board would have to vote on this probably in like October, September, October.
Okay,
Would have to vote exactly where you want that money to sort of fall in.
But the
But-
vote has to happen now.
Before the
so
year
we
end.
Do that. and
To allow us to do it.
whenever, and I'll
If
do
we
it
can.
for that.
You have to show that you had intent of
Oh,
changing
right.
those or adding to it.
Okay.
Unless any of you have questions, I'm fine with adding that to make sure that we're covered if we
If-
don't have anything left. Okay, you will leave that, underneath that?
yeah.
Okay. All righty, real estate tax payment dates?
Yeah, so I'm thinking we'll be okay for this upcoming year, because August 31st is a Saturday. And I think the post office will still market the 31st if somebody walks in there and drops it off. So I think we'll be okay, but, and I had this on the agenda prior to sort of learning a little bit more about, I just assumed the post office was like the bank where after that Friday, that's it, Saturday, they postmark it the next day, but I don't think that's the way it works. So the year 25-26, we're gonna have this problem where the 31st will fall on Sunday. I assume the first is gonna be Labor Day. My history has always been, you leave it on the tax bills as the 31st, but if something were to be postmarked on, say, the 2nd, which would be the next business day, the tax collectors would accept that as paid on time or paid in the discount period.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
I'm sorry?
We will.
Oh, okay. So that's, yeah, that was my understanding. I think we're gonna be okay for this coming year, but it'll be the next year. So, I kind of wanted to give you a heads up, see if that's what the board intent is. To leave the dates the same, we can always change the dates. Or we can just leave them the same and know that our collectors will accept those payments.
I'm fine with that. I know they've all been collectors for a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay with that.
Yes.
And the collectors aren't given notice that they're supposed to accept those payments, even if they're not postmarked on.
yeah. We've already, we've been communicating over the last week or so
Okay.
about this and some other things. So they'll know, yeah.
So anything that lands around the second should be good. But
So for this upcoming year, the 31st is
this year,
still a Saturday, yeah, right.
Then next
But
year,
moving forward, yeah,
more into the September.
right, yeah, yeah. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. I'm fine with that. Move on to what everybody's waiting for, the 2024-25 final budget review and discussion. Peg, you can still hear us, okay?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Let's see if we can fix that.
Okay, I was gonna try to share my screen here just for.
Short purposes.
Oops, new prices. Try now, Mr. Bishop.
Okay. So I'll just go through some handouts here, and then turn it over to the committee here to discuss, but. A peer of mine in the county sent out a spreadsheet that was sort of gathering everybody's, proposed final budget and noting it if it was a final budget. So this is the way everybody looks as if their final budget's gonna look when they're done. And I can see, Springford up there and Springfield already approved their final budgets. So Springford is a 5.3%, tax increase going into next year. And all the other schools up there, I was not able to confirm if Cheltenham and Wissahickon actually entered anything, or if they're going with a zero. That one, I don't know. It didn't look like they really, put in what their tax increase is gonna be for next year. So ignoring those two, Norristown, Pottstown, I think those are the only two that are going with a 0%. Then it's anywhere from 2.1% up to Jenkintown at 5.9%. So just for the committee to see what's happening, countywide, and then the two columns over there was just, that's the millage rank. So we are 18th in the county for, millage rate.
And just, I don't wanna go too far into the weeds, but is there a reason Pottstown and Norristown, which, both have?
Well, I was
Yeah, I
gonna
know,
ask the
I
same
know there
thing.
is, I'm asking the question, I know.
Yeah, so-
Yes or two.
So my understanding was, in a meeting, I heard, I believe the business manager from Pottstown speaking, they're getting a lot of money from the state. So I don't know if it's the level up in the basic ed, but, they're getting a lot more state revenue than almost everyone else in the county is getting.
That's right.
Billions.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah. The
You can
first-
hear that. That's just absurd
Yeah,
for those listening at home.
So the committee's familiar with this spreadsheet. The only new item is down there at the bottom. Kim Bass, our director of curriculum, found $8,200 that we could remove from the curriculum budget. So, so there's one more adjustment there in the expenditure budget. There are no new adjustments in the revenue side of things, so we're still where we were as of a month ago. And then here are, that top box is your baseline. That would be a 0 mil increase, leaving $4.6 million of fund balance used in order to balance the budget. And that would be a 1.07 or 1.41% tax increase for Berks and Montgomery counties. Then the bottom left is a 5%. And just to be clear, on the last presentation and the board motion, we had, so the proposed final budget was a 5% mill increase, and it had 7.34% tax increase. That's what it was prior to getting the gaming relief figures that we received. So the gaming relief did increase. And what that did is that actually brought down that 7.34 down to either a 6.58 or a 6.81, depending on the county. So then scenario B is just to show you a 4.5% mill increase, and what that would be. 4.5% would still be using 2.6 million of fund balance, and it would be just over 6% tax increase. And then C and D are 3.9%, which would be using 2.9 million of fund balance and a tax increase of just over 5.3 and just over 5.6%. And then scenario D is 3.5% mill increase, still using 3 million of fund balance, and then right around 5% tax increase.
how are you want to stop, Herman?
Yes, that's all I have.
Okay, all right, our turn. Okay, so I wanted to say a few things. We had some. Over the course of since the last finance meeting, we've had some discussions about. Some of the board members weren't happy with some of the increases, and so I'd like to make a proposal that. We had some jobs on here that I think if we eliminated them this year and keep them on the radar. That that's about $500,000 worth of savings. Which hopefully will help. That would be the special ed supervisor, the maintenance supervisor, and the high school coach MTSS coordinator. That's what I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, any thoughts on that?
I don't have that paper in front of me with the,
The positions.
which is.
Yeah,
That's what the.
I have it in here somewhere, that's why I had so many papers about.
Yeah.
All right, so, all right, well, I mean, I can say, so special ed supervisor would take about $160,000 off. Maintenance supervisor, 80,000, so that's 240, and 105 for high school coach, MTSS coordinator. So that makes it 240, that makes it 345. All right, so it's not actually a half, but it's approaching 400,000. Some of the smaller, the cafeteria assistants, district nurses, that's kind of a wash. And it'll actually save us a little bit, I think, in the long run. Since they'll be ours, we won't have to pay an employment agency for them, for the extras. Anyone else have any thoughts? On where we might do some reducing?
We thought about having, adjusting the revenue to include any of the governor's pension money coming in.
That's true,
I
that's
mean,
another-
right now we have a zero, we have what's level from this year with a projection of 400 plus. I don't know if we were interested in entertaining half of that or a quarter of that or something to help that offset. And then the other question I'll buy was from Mr. McCarrick. Where did we end up with the Western Center? And was there a savings with what was coming from that Western Center money? That was from what we budgeted.
Yes, so they added the security, is that correct?
That is correct. The
Yeah.
basic option for security, which was an additional 50,000 down at the, VOTEC. But that only relates to about 23,000 here, if that, at the max. Due to the way things are funded through the.
So we
three
have the
schools.
bulk of that 50,000.
Yeah, it was split.
Almost half.
If that was 25, I don't think we actually have 50, but, you know.
We don't have full 50. I just thought we'd have more than 30, let's say, of that because of the ADM. That's what's measuring the new money coming in. Let me scroll to that.
Yeah, so I took a look at it and I saw maybe $10,000 tops. That looks like we could cut from the budget, if I had the numbers right.
So what we have base plus.
We had projected the base plus all the additions, which would have been, put it up to 130. Since we only went with the base safety, it should have brought it down to like 50 to 60. So if we had included the full total in there at first, the full.
Wasn't the
additions-
full, was the third option, 160?
I thought it was all.
Well, we didn't include the full, the base plus all the options. Because if that was what come back from the Western Center, we'd be adding 60,000 to that. We were kind of at number 3, if there was 4 options, base security and AP, and then,
Yes.
and then everything. So I think,
Yeah, so I had a $260,000 increase in next year's budget over this year's budget.
okay, so what was just the base? This is the question.
I thought they were going to send information out to you on that.
Yeah, I didn't,
So technically there's a savings, so it's at least $10,000, and it's probably more than that. Yeah. Trying to remember, we talked about so many different things in the last months. I don't remember all the numbers exact. All right, so while they're looking at that, do we have thoughts on whether we would entertain adding more to our revenue vis-a-vis the state? I mean, even if we So my thought is, even if we don't add in, say, $400,000 to our revenue, at least in our head, we know that that's coming, probably. I mean, I guess it just is whether you want to make it real or not real,
But we should see what it looks like.
to add it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we have base funding in there right now, just don't have the hopeful increase.
The extra, yeah.
The extra being
Hopeful
400,000.
increase.
Mhm. Yeah, fingers crossed.
The 400 would be, if the legislature passed everything that the governor proposed.
Right. And that could move the tax increase like 0.5 our revenue.
Mhm. I think it's 0.5 for every 250,000, is that so right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
So a little more than 0.5.
Yeah. So we've already, so 345 minus the salaries.
Melanie, I did find my paper that I think you were saying a similar thing, except inside out of what I was saying. I sent an email to the board asking if not asking, but talking about, a couple ideas, but considering to keep the ESL teacher, the school psychologist, keep 2 classroom teachers, keep the 2 nurses, keep the CAF assistant. And those were the only things I was thinking from the wish list. I'm calling it wish list.
So,
I think it's similar, but not exactly what you were saying.
okay, well, I wanted to keep in the college and career coordinator. So my thoughts on that are anything we've had, which include the psychology, anything that we had that was paid for with ESSER funds. If we don't have that, we're going backwards. That's how I'm thinking about that. If anyone else has any thoughts on that? Yep.
I don't necessarily feel like that. I just feel like that was a kind of a bonus. It was a nice bonus. I like it. I like all of these things, but I'm kind of laying it out. Like, I disagree, but that's, I can disagree. It's not a ton right there on.
No,
In the grand
scheme of things.
Was that the only thing you and I are disagreeing with?
I think so. I wanted to keep everything else except those 3 positions I said, special ed director, maintenance supervisor, and high school MTSS coordinator. Yes.
Melanie, that last one was paid for with ESSER funds last year. The high school, is that when
The
you?
high school
The high
MTSS.
school, yes, that was paid for with ESSER funds.
Okay.
And we eliminated 3 counselors that were funded this year through ESSER. I didn't even put them on the list because that's 3 professional staff. So just for context.
Thank you. Yeah, again, we know a lot, but we don't know everything.
I didn't
That's why
put
you're
them
on
up
here.
because 3 FTEs is a lot.
Mhm.
None of this is easy to.
Yeah, it's
I
not.
realize that everybody in the room has a stake in like the words coming out of my mouth. I get that. And I get it as an educator as well. Like I know what it's like to have a work with a budget that isn't what you wish it would be. So just trying to open it up a little bit.
How does losing the MTSS coordinator for the high school along with 3 counselors?
So I'll weigh in. I would tell you that if you take the supervisor and the MTSS coordinator off of the high school with 3, 3 is across, so it was, 1 essentially. I'm concerned, given the achievement levels at the high school, the additional responsibilities of principals outside of that work who offset. We're on TSI, we're going into TSI for a 2nd year, and it's quite possible for a 3rd year. And so I think the MTSS coordinator, not having that position and not having a supervisor creates a really tenable situation for the high school administrators. It's also the most, quite honestly, the achievement in that area and performance is what we pay out most in comp ed and litigation. So when we look at the student to staff ratio in special education, there's over 200+ special ed students. And I won't, 297, sorry, secondary. What I would say is that there's two special ed staff overseeing 600 students. That's why, I think losing both would take us backwards in focusing on that population's performance.
Yeah.
I don't know if Frank wants to weigh in.
Well,
We're,
if you weigh in, I'd say if you could pick one, what would it be?
I mean, I think, you know, if challenged, we could absorb some responsibility. But I would defer, well, I think Carol and Frank would probably duke it out. We have out of district kids that we have to go see. That takes us out of the building, so it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add, we have a total there's 216 K to 5 of our special ed kids, and there's 297 at our secondary level, from grade 6 to 12. Mind you, and we all know the importance of our out of district students. That means that no matter what, your secondary supervisor, currently, I think there are 23 of our out of district students are at the secondary level, which means we need an LEA, who's the supervisor, to attend and participate in every one of those meetings. And attend the meetings, participate in them when there's concerns, special ed wise. There's consistent ongoing follow-up. So there's a lot of time right there for your supervisor. I would also say, as Dr. Farina had stated, in regards to legal cases, I will just share in general, and I think we've communicated this since 2020, our numbers in every which way have gone up, even in regards to evaluations with psychologists, even for our private school students. We don't deny, we 100% evaluate those students. That increases the psychologist numbers, which in turn then increases numbers at our secondary level for special ed teachers as well. I think it would be difficult, and our highest caseload numbers, as Dr. Farina also said, are at our high school, basically in general, our secondary level.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So what Dr. Farina just described, and I guess, was that Mrs. Giblin?
Yes.
Okay, so what it looks like to me is, you know, we've seen this increase over the last 4 years, and now we're reacting to it. To me, it reads like, now we're in TSI, so let's shut the barn door after the horse got out. That's just my perspective. And that's what has me really bothered with all of this. So I'm just not feeling good about it.
So just for clarity, I've asked for this position for the last 3 years. It never made it in one. So. I just FYI thing, it did not, we had other priorities that, and we fulfilled them as a district, and the board supported those.
And
So,
just to add to you, Dr. Farina, I think when I'm referring to over the last 4 years, that's not when TSI really came into play, which is the last couple of years. I'm going back to a lot of the areas of concern for our students. Students qualifying, higher numbers, and I'm going pandemic onward. Mental health needs, all those different areas. So there's a lot more needs, I think, more common or more frequent. Frank, I'm sure you would agree, at our secondary level. And the participation by your special ed supervisor currently and myself. I do believe I probably should have an office at the high school. Just due to the increase in needs of kids.
Mr. Roche will give you, Dr. Roche will give you his. It's. Oh, wait, that's not in the high school. You
No,
want-
that's
okay.
special ed.
I hear you, sorry.
So
Trying to,
I would go with some of these, but I would probably want to see a supervisor be kept in. Because, you know, as we've just heard, you know, this has been increasing over years. And I've seen it. You know, it'd be nice to have the MTSS coordinator and everything, because I'd like to see that get fully implemented and have us tracking our kids from start to finish throughout the district. But our special ed kids need this. over the past few years. Numbers are increasing for a variety of reasons. I'm not gonna say what they were. But I remember seeing people out over the past few years, kids are having emotional problems, kids are having behavioral problems. You know, this all falls under special ed, you know, along with their other contributing conditions that they may have, ADD, ADHD, you know, defiance disorders, I mean, learning disabilities. So I think I'd like to see one of the supervisors stay in there.
Can I just add one thing and I'll be, once another word? The other point with this is, I think Dr. Freeman may have also brought it up, is you do see we give you information when we need approval by the board for agreements. I think a piece of this, now we don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, but what I will say is currently due to the nature of the needs and supporting the full department K-12, if there was more participation and ability of special ed supervisors to attend and support the building level LEAs in meetings, there's just the area of knowledge is in special education. So I think, I don't know if it would stop the request for records coming in or the agreements or going to due process, but I know that there would be more support for the teachers or the administrators at the building level in that way, which we know that that's a cost.
Yes, well, it's just not, we just can't have the teachers on the front line. We have to have people in the trenches, in the back row, supporting them, giving them the supports they need. And as we've heard, they've asked for these for a number of years. We need to put more pressure on the state and the federal. We can't just keep fulfilling positions with these short-term fixes that are coming from our governments. We need to petition them more than anything else. We need to get more equitable funding. I mean, you just saw the damn listing there for the aides for, you know, some of the other surrounding members of the community, Norristown, Pottstown, doing zero because they're getting more aid. You know, we have to make it more equitable across the board. So I'm in favor of keeping one of the supervisors for this.
Which supervisor?
They had for 2 special ed supervisors.
No, one special supervisor and it was a maintenance supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no.
That was a priority.
Agents. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, keep the special ed. You're right, I'm sorry.
Why did you want to add in or?
I mean, I agree with a lot of what was said. I think, having I want to say more dedicated secondary supervisor with more technical knowledge in light of the fact that our area of improvement in TSI is related to special ed primarily as a subgroup of focus. It is definitely something to consider. The MTSS component also services all students. So, if I'm asked to pick, I don't know what my answer is at the moment right now. I'd have to think about that one before I would just want to concretely sit back here and say like, yep, no, just scratch this one, because they all have a purpose and they all are going to support students who are underperforming is basically what these 2 positions are for. Specifically, there's other high school positions on the list, but these 2 support specific groups of students who are underperforming. And also special, identified in different ways. So they both have value. That's just my perspective. I have to, if you wanted me to pick it at the moment, I don't know that I would want to give you an answer about which one I want right now. If I had to pick.
Our TSI, the numbers are improving, is that correct?
I would say
By the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, overall with our graduating class, our numbers, we met our TSI goal for graduating class. We also, preliminary data shows though that we had, we did not meet the 9th grade passing rate for all courses. So, which is, so it's the
You're
12th
looking at
graders.
a group coming up that.
Yeah, we're gonna have a group coming up that needs support. Yeah, I mean, it's, now that we have plenty of time on that, some of the courses are not, vital, but there's things that, need to be addressed with our underclassmen too. We met our goal with our seniors that graduated, which was 80% special ed students or more graduating, passing all courses, which they did, 82.6. So, at this point, yeah, our underclassmen need support, and that position would support our 9th, 10th, 11th graders and our rising 8th graders that are coming up to us as well.
I think that's the challenge, the MTSS coordinator at the high school for the lion's share. With one of the assistant principals to keep the momentum going. In that area, just as, you know.
The technical
in that
knowledge
role.
of the, sorry, Dr. Freya, technical knowledge of the special ed supervisor in relation to the IEP components as well is crucial to have. I mean, but again, it's, so like like I said, they're both, those two positions are probably are the most, in my opinion, are the most important ones to support the underperforming students that we have in the building right now at the high school level.
I
But
guess I would
that's,
say kind of business, like if I looked at it, like you were able to improve without the added supervisor, so maybe there's a chance you can still see improvement without this position filled. Just super clinically business-like, because I'm emotionally invested too. I want to see the students do well. I want, nobody wants to say like defund the special ed department, you know, like these are all really important. We're never gonna say that, but just to look at like business-like, okay, on paper, it looks like you did see some improvement here without that spot, so.
yeah, so I think the way to frame it is, yeah, on paper, there's a slight level of improvement, I would say at this point. But we had the MTSS coordinator. If we're talking about neither one of them, then I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what that's gonna do, but we had both of those positions. We had the MTSS coordinator position this year that could at least assist in some of that improvement, I guess. But, you know, again, I can't predict what that hit would be if we don't, you know.
Part of that's the first year of a run, to know that there's positive piece and exponentially the potential for what that will do in future years.
And the high school would, without that position continuing, the high school would be the only building where they've not been afforded coaching, instructional coaching. So they would still continue to be the only building with the most number of kids in need.
So right now we're kind of grappling over like $105,000 essentially, if you boil it down. Not huge. We can't. If you look at anything else, is there anywhere I had thrown out the idea of like each department shaving off, say, 3% of its budget? And I just ran with the numbers a little bit. It doesn't help a ton, but it could make a dent. And then I said, what about 6% of each department? I know salaries have been negotiated, like we got to keep the lights on, like there are things that are not negotiable at all. And I just can't see every resident, every taxpayer is shaving off their grocery bill, they're cutting, you know, they're making cuts where they can. So I just wonder if there's somewhere in all of this, and it doesn't have to be the MTSS coordinator, that's not gonna save the day here. But is there any room where we can move this down a little bit and tighten our belts, same as we're asking our taxpayers to do?
Well, the only thing I was thinking about with that, just a little lost my train of thought. So, oh, no. So when I read your email, I thought to myself, okay, so we all know that like 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits, and that we can't, like you said, we can't change that. So, but if you ask, and I know, and I think Peg her number was about 10% off the building budgets. But in total, the building budgets, which includes athletics, I believe, is
Athletics is a separate budget. It's not housing.
well, when I look back to in November, when we did talk about building budgets, the total for all the buildings was $1 million. So if you cut 10% of that, it's still only $100,000. We're still not getting anywhere.
But Melanie, it's perception, it's optics. And, you know, you and I have had this discussion.
I know.
And the people I represent are the retired senior citizens on fixed incomes.
I know.
And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I get that.
Are there any principals here that want to share that there was a proposed 10% cut to your budget, what that impact may or may
What it
not be?
looks like.
It's put you on the spot.
I knew that. Well, it doesn't even make that much of a difference.
No,
Really,
3%,
no,
6% made a little more sense.
Well, 10% is the.
When you're-
10 is easier.
Yeah, percentage of the total, it makes an impact, but when you look at a percentage of the true areas that we can control the costs of, you know, it's much smaller. And again, I'll go back to the fact that this comes back to funding from state and federal sources, plain and simple. You know, they are not equitable, and that's it. Next, at our board meeting, I hope to have a slide to show what the millage rate would be over the next, for the past 10 years, if we continued raising taxes. I mean, we had a couple of years where we did zero, or close to zero. And,
Zero is still like 2.8%.
Yeah,
Zero is still free.
we had 1 year, and you'll never hear this. You know, please excuse me, Drew, but you'll never hear this from your financial person in the district. They always want to raise taxes, because if you don't raise taxes 1 year, you'll hear a term called missed revenue. You know, we heard that years ago, because what happens is it's compounding over the years. You raise it a little here, next year, raise a little bit more, got that plus what you did the current year, and it just keeps adding up over years. I spoke with Drew earlier, we might be able to have something as to show what it would have been if we had continued raising taxes each year. But this board for the past 4 to 5 years has been very conservative and very deliberate in what we've paid for and funded and chosen to do. As you've heard, they've asked for positions multiple times over the years and they've never gotten them.
Last year specifically, I told the team, don't even ask for positions. We just settled the teacher contract, so
Thank
you may not have heard of it. They were all told. Why do you don't? The teacher contract was so large, such an investment, that's what the thing was
Well,
last year.
this is what our public needs to understand also. I mean, when, and this precedes Dr. Roche getting here, when we had the middle school debate years ago, you know, I came up and I said I wasn't for it and I wasn't against it, but you needed a comprehensive plan. The lack of that comprehensive plan is what we're paying for now. You know, I don't know how many, well, most of the staff here has been here, you know, for this period, but there are a lot of parents in the district that don't understand this. There's a lot of residents in the district that don't understand this. We are now paying for poor planning. You know, there was a year when they said, we don't have to do an increase, but we should do a token increase. And I'm sorry for keeping you all here late. And somebody said, okay, 3 point something. And I was like, that is not a token increase. A token increase is 0.5% or 1%, you know, not 3. And the board voted for it. There were some people that voted against it, but the board voted for it and passed it. So this is problems that we're paying for now. And unfortunately, it's a fact of life and it's a fact of business for us, because we basically are a nonprofit entity running this district for our kids. That's my viewpoint.
That's a question.
Sure. Just say who you are.
I'm Chris Donatelli, resident in Pennsburg. Couple things, I guess. Looking at, you know, we're in tough economic times. I mean, we haven't been in this since I don't think we've been this tough since I was 18. When Jimmy Carter was president, and you know, everybody is trying to script. You know, there's going into savings, and credit card debt is proven to be going up. People can't afford things. I'm asking, take another look at it. Look for that grail and see if there's not a place. And one of the places I was thinking that I haven't heard is budget reserves. And you have assigned and unassigned budget reserves, and I haven't heard anything or seen any dollar signs, or at least that I can think of, although I'm vision impaired right now, but I didn't see that. What about budget reserves? Is there money that can come from that?
All the scenarios that you just saw on the screen with the other all had some portion of some budget reserves taken off.
We have always used part of the budget to keep our increases down.
Where does that
So
place
we
in
do-
the fund balance use?
Now, I saw fund balance, but I heard fund balance,
And I don't,
That's it.
That's it.
That's our savings, basically.
but that's,
So,
So
so when we don't get our grant, if hopefully we do, our grants that we need for asbestos removal and roofing. When I was just out the high school for graduation, I heard about a few areas that are leaking. You can't run a building without that. They're millions of dollars. We have about $9 million. And that's total. So if you subtract out at 4.5%, you subtract out $2.6 million. And I can tell you that in my 7 years of budgeting, this is the closest this has ever been. Like, I am confident that what our budget is really close to what it's gonna be. So you can take your $9 million and you can subtract 2.6 right out of it. And then you haven't done anything.
From someone who's been starting to get now, and I wish I had, when I moved here, I got burned out years ago from doing this, and I didn't want to get involved, but everything that's been going on, it's compelled me to get back and get active in the community again, and doing this and bringing things up, and this whole thing that went on with the curriculum and spending money on it, and ignoring the fact that there was Hillsdale had a free curriculum, you didn't have to pay for it, and it wasn't even considered, it wasn't looked at. That means a taxpayer, that, I find
So,
that kind of
and
offensive.
let me just say something about that. So, were you at the meeting when I said how much that comes out to if you only use the curriculum for 3 years?
Right.
For 7 grades?
Right.
It's $65 a kid.
I understand
Okay,
that.
so-
How many other areas are there that money we're looking at?
We have a
that we don't
curriculum
need to spend
review
money?
cycle, and not to mention the fact that we've already spent a year working on that curriculum, and that's curriculum writers and vetting. We have this discussion and
I think
yes.
he's just saying, are there other areas that are similar where there was an option for paying zero and we chose to pay?
But let me be honest, that's not a pay zero, right?
No.
That's handing us information. It still has to get processed by our teachers. Still have to buy, all of the, if you were to find, books and workbooks and all of those things. I don't know what it would cost. It's not even necessarily aligned with the Pennsylvania. I'm just saying that is out there. We continue to hear about this free curriculum versus $216,000. There may be a savings there of who knows what, but that's not
Yeah,
what.
I think his question is just, are there any?
I
other-
understand, but now that's on the table, I want to square.
Hillsdale did not offer a science curriculum that was SEALs or PA or MTSS aligned. So just so that's up, they do offer other ones, but science was not an option. They didn't have.
So that would be, I mean, even if they did have one,
You're 100%
potentially just setting our students up for failure because it's not aligned with
Correct.
the items that they're expected to learn while they're in Pennsylvania. So
100%.
I'm not trying to put that down. I'm saying that it's not simply a 216,000 versus zero. There's definitely costs associated with all of that. I don't know what it would have been, but that's, as you said, the cycle to go through that. I can tell you that when we went back through since the first time and reviewing, so the kind of scratching that surface, that's on this third sheet or whatever the second one is, that 1.6 minus the 8,200 was all the savings that we administration cranked down on all the department people who walked out woozy from our meeting of trying to get down and have those conversations. We found some duplicates in the staff and we found some duplicates. We had some things that may have been in technology. Oh, no, it's in curriculum. Oh, no, it's over here. And we cleaned some of those things up. I'm not saying we crunched by a certain percent, but during that cycle from May through the last meeting, that's where the 1.6 of the crankdown came in. You know, I think what you guys are faced with is how much of the fund balance do you feel comfortable using and what positions. It always comes down to positions, which is stinky, but that's kind of how it is. But we're as lean as we can get without beginning to cut things.
Okay.
So if there was a 5%, 10% type of thing, the team will go back, they'll get it to where you want it, but then they'll go, by the way, we're not doing something. I'll use a very vague example. I said to Mr. Howard, well, you gotta cut 80,000, what are you gonna do? Maybe you cut someone every 3 weeks as opposed to every week. Are we okay with that by saving X amount of dollars on what was there? And maybe we are, and maybe that's okay, but there is a contract, but that doesn't get, I don't want to put any other potential examples out there because I'll get quoted in saying Roach wants to cut this, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I want to be clear that if you want us to get down, we'll get down. I don't know how much pain it's gonna be. I have everybody here, maybe they have an idea in their head if they were pushing, I'm not gonna put them on the spot.
Yeah.
But that's, we've got to the point of, you know, the percentage of it, are we taking anything out of fund balance? Because if the answer is no, we have a lot of work to do. If we're comfortable with something out of fund balance, and then you're trying to figure out what's an appropriate tax increase, then we can work from there. I was here what that 0.0 was, because we came out of COVID, and the same conversation we're having now. No one can afford a tax increase coming out of COVID. We were devastated with everything. So it was like, okay, so when is the right time for a tax increase? And then there was a 2 zeros, which with STEB I get, then a 2.5, and then the 4 with the teacher contract. We've got 4 contracts and pieces to that, so we get where you want us to go.
Question for Drew, have we done, you may have answered this before, have you done a capital reserve analysis? What should we have in there? Like, what is, can you just tell us right now, on the top of your head, what would be prudent? Billion. Okay, look, the meeting's over, everybody should leave, like, we're done. Like, is 9 million good? Is it bad? Are we, I know you have more insight than like.
Yeah, so before, well, certainly before Dr. Frame started writing for any and every grant possible, I would have said 9 million was nowhere near what we needed with all the, I mean.
Yeah.
It probably still isn't near what we need for the list of things that we need to get done. So that's, I mean, that's a huge help if we can get those grants, but I don't think 9 million is enough right now. So, and I'm glad that, Mr. Donatelli said that. I was reminded, I did put 400,000 in budgetary reserve, which is just 0.5% of the total expenditure budget, which is just something that I have always done to just say, oh, something pops up, we have budgetary reserve. That's 400,000 that you could cut, just knowing then we don't have any sort of little extras sitting in that budget anywhere.
That we're not putting money away for a rainy day or a leaky septic system at Hereford or Marble, excuse me.
But that's not 400,000, so that's.
No, but these things, well, a couple of years ago was something else that happened at the high school that we won't mention that.
Yeah.
No.
We don't talk about that.
You know, so, you know, these are the things that we're tasked with, faced with.
Yeah,
But then
this
also-
is not easy.
But then also just, which I think Mr. Donatelli was talking about, so we do have $5.5 million in committed fund balance. And we have,
Can you give us an idea what some of the things are that we've committed them to?
so that's a good question. I
I like that question.
Sorry, 5.5 in committed and then 9 in capital reserve, and then is there something else called unassigned?
There is unassigned. So again, let me back up. This is as of the last audit, which was June 30, 2023. But we don't have this year's yet. We don't know how we're finishing out the year.
We gain interest?
You do, yeah, because basically that is money in your bank account.
Okay,
Um,
so be a year's worth of interest.
right, but I'm looking at a projection of expenditures exceeding what our budget was for this year. So all that interest is gone. This
Okay,
is how we finish the year.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
So it looks, as of 2020, 5.5 million was committed, 3.5 million was for retirement, and 2 million was for debt service. I don't know what that means, but the board can change those commitments at any time
Oh,
through.
out
a
of
board
the
meeting.
commitment, 3.5 is for
Is that
retirement.
user payments?
That's what I'm assuming.
I think one of them was for, their schools. That was, we put that in budgetary reserve. Oh. Yeah, we added 1.5 million to that. Okay. Because we have so, like, that's why I say that at every meeting, look at all the charter schools and all the soccer schools, because it costs a fortune. And it's 3 times more than it was when I first got on the board, so that's something that we can't change.
We'll keep that legislation for
Yes.
charter school reform.
Yeah.
Be a welcome blush when you start to see that the top gen ed student will be 8,000. As
Instead
opposed
of
to 13, 12,
Yes.
13,
13,
whatever it
I
is.
know it's a lot.
Exactly.
It makes a big difference. I mean, these are things we can't control.
To reduce to 8,000, just this year, it would be $1.1 million.
Right,
I'm sorry.
exactly.
We don't have to spend the charters.
If we, Leah said she figured it out. If it were moved to $8,000 for a gen ed student, we would save $1.1 million.
Do they have a number for the special education students, or is that based upon need?
That's just us.
No.
That's just like looking at.
I'm saying for special ed, right now, we're 32,000, I think, for a special ed student, not even looking at the IEP.
Right.
I don't know if that, I mean, if 8,000 for the gen ed, if the special education student, I don't know if it was based, I haven't read that piece yet. If it's based upon it, are they 8 plus then whatever special ed supports it in, or is it, let's say, 15 for special ed, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's significant, no matter what it is.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Anything less than the 14 we're paying now, it's going to be significant amount of money that can be used for.
All of
other
these things,
things.
yeah, all
And
this
to be clear, that's on the table.
Particularly, it's in legislation.
there's legislation on the table right now.
Particularly whenever you look at the, when you talk about fluff in the budget. Let's look at cyber charter schools. And with that money is going for advertising and CEO pay and luxury vacations and whatnot. that none of our administration is able to take.
Thank you, I agree. And we also have to keep in mind that because of the, and I hate to beat the dead horse of the middle school. It's a beautiful building, I got over it. Oh, yay.
She's over it.
But I'm not over it, I'm never gonna be over it until 2043. 2043 is when the middle school is paid off. Okay, so we have all of these bonds, and the first one is, we won't get rid of one until 2029. So there's no borrowing, there is no borrowing. If there's borrowing, then it's gonna cost us another $1 million a year to pay it back. So I'm just, that's the horse I am beating, and I can't help it, sorry. That one just gets me every time I think about it. All right, I'm on.
Can we get back to?
Sorry. Yeah, for the list of, for the,
Hold on to
you
that,
know
but
what else we have?
5.5 is in committed, 3.5 is toward retirement. However, I saw retirement in the budget. Is that?
That's the
different?
actual, what we pay yearly.
Yeah, so there's, so yeah, for every dollar of salary, we're gonna pay 33.99 cents for retirement. But money is typically set aside in retirement to sort of maybe use some of that to help these increases that we're seeing in that retirement expense or retirement percentage every year.
Are we on the way down now?
Yeah, it's, well, not the way down, but it has
Leveled
slowed,
off.
yeah, leveled off, slowed down.
Cause it was a lot more before.
So do it's good to have this 3.5 in the committed?
Or do you think we could recommit
Can
it?
we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Play
can,
around there
We
a
can't
little,
take it
cause
back
I
out.
could
Let's
use
recommit it.
3 million.
Once, yeah, me too. Once you commit it,
It's
you can't
one-time
take
money.
it out. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't take it out of committed and put it in the general fund. It's there for, you can
But
change the reason
reassign it.
for it.
Wait, that could possibly.
So maybe it pays for the turf fields
Right.
or.
So yeah, one-time purchase, if you're gonna
Right.
put it into staffing, then. you'll
Right,
be
and
here a
then you
year from
gotta
now with
support
the
it.
same situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
How are the retirement funds managed?
at Peters.
And they do the distributions and everything to
Yeah.
retire.
They did to pay that into them for every dollar. So, yeah.
It's to help catch up with.
Oh,
all
it's
other funding.
another, just another payroll tax.
Yeah,
that you have
exactly.
to respond.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so, back to the
So
question.
back to the positions,
Right.
because it sounds like you have asked all the departments to get it.
We've gone through each of their budgets line by line, asked the
So
question.
to ask them to
determine-
do
I mean,
another 3, 6, 10% would be.
We could, I mean, again, it's not that it's, can't do it, it's, I think they're at the point where they feel like they're maintaining their programs, or they're, they're moving forward with whatever trajectory they've been on with X, Y, or Z type of things, and, to.
I think the focus has to be on improving the academics. And it seems to me the supervisor for the special education students, given the fact that you say you're getting an increase every year, what does the ninth grade class look like? Is it an increase from last year? Or do you know that yet?
Yeah, we do have the numbers. What I can tell you though, as far as initial evaluations at our high school level, that means the school psychologist becomes involved. There's a request then for an evaluation, whether it's coming from the school team, many times it's coming from the family side. That now, of those students and the percentage of them have been qualifying, they now add to that. So they're upcoming. So initial evaluations, I don't have the number on me, but that have been conducted at the high school. What I can say is our high school psychologist has completed evaluations for special education more than any of the other school psychologists over the 23-24. And they're not really typically looking at a learning disability, they're looking at the other disabilities.
Okay, so it's fair to say that each year you're getting more and more.
It appears to be trending that way, yes.
And in full disclosure, post-COVID,
Yes.
we've seen a huge increase at the secondary level.
Yeah.
Because that's
Often we saw that.
Of not meeting academics during COVID, was the online, the virtual learning.
Those settlements, I
Did
think,
students
are kind of,
switch back
I mean,
or didn't make progress like they should have?
I mean, I think that there was definitely an impact from not participating in brick and mortar instruction. There's
100%. Yeah, and what I will also say, just on a side note, and I know, Mr. Flanagan was talking about the ninth graders and making or not making that progress. A lot of the research clearly shows that your ninth graders, if they are not in school, if they are not passing their core courses, that freshman or ninth grade year, it's critical to graduating within those 4 years. I mean, it is the research. So if we have the number of students we're saying that did or didn't pass courses, for lack of a better word, they are behind the 8 ball entering into 10th grade. And so then we've got a lot more supports. So those numbers are increasing. Our numbers, they were high last year coming into 9th grade this year going into next year. Might be a number of 5 or 6 students less than last year, but that's, again, if you look at the requests for evaluations at our high school level over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, it is increased.
Okay.
And, you know, for our part, we are applying, we utilize access funds, the board approves us to submit for that. Now that doesn't come back to the department, but it's several $100,000, and Ms. Giblin also, applies for contingency funding. So our reimbursement was over 170. Thank you. So, you know, we're trying to offset because we know it is an expensive endeavor department. So, but that goes back into the general fund. Doesn't go back to the department.
Do you think?
Even though I really try to get them to give it back to us, it doesn't.
Do you think, any of our principals that are here, can you give, you don't have to say anything specific, but if someone were to ask you to cut your budget 10%, and this is hypothetical, I'm not doing this minute, can you give us an idea of what would come to your mind first that would go? Or like, is it paper, is it pencils, is it crayons, is it, I'm just asking in general.
I mean, so.
I'll talk first, Frank, for the 3 elementary buildings, our budgets are in the 60s, so it's like $6,700.
I
So
know.
we're looking at general office supplies usually and things of that nature, because there's certain things we can't cut. You know, whether it's curriculum related materials that are consumable, or transportation related costs to be able to do some of the endeavors that we do, which has been a cost that continues to rise from year to year. But you know, for us, it would be just general office supplies. They're not large budgets, so you know, I know high school and middle school are a little bit different than you know the 3 elementaries, but you know, we're looking at about $6,700.
Yeah. From an elementary standpoint, you're talking about, or at least at Hereford, about $155 a student. So you'd be thinking about, if you're saying 10% away from there, $2 away from that.
Anybody else want to add in?
So I mean, for high school, you know, it's about a $230,000 budget. That's a lot of technology and other things. So the first thing we would do is it's about 23 grand that would come out of the budget. Just taking a look at probably I would start with office supplies and anything that's non-essential. Potentially any type of trip that we might fund, like extra that we might ship in to try to lower the cost for our students. We pull that, so the students would have to, like, you know, let's say that the team, for example, we have FBLA going in July to Florida for the national competition. We're sending kids to that, and we're trying to fund some of that to offset the cost for the kids so they can go. We would pull that, and the students would have to, if they wanted to go, they'd have to go to pay the full amount, for example. Like those are some areas I can say that we would start with.
Okay.
You know, from there, you know, we have to look further at, you know, departments, paper, things. I would start with that type of thing first.
And your budget includes a graduation process.
Yeah, it includes everything for graduation, like, you know, the golf cart rentals that we had to help our handicapped people attend, you know, get down to the field, the sound system on the field, that's all part of the high school budget.
Okay.
So, there's
I can say that my first budget year, so this is my 7th one. My first one, I remember when Rob Carpenter got up and he said what his budget was for the high school, and I think it was $210,000. Somewhere right around there. And I looked at him and I said, that's it? And he looked at me horrified. And I said, no, that's it? Like, that's all there is? Like,
That'd be more
that's
than that,
it?
because when I first got here, I cut it, and then 2 years ago, Mr. DeRiso trimmed it. So that's where they're.
And I'm just
sitting.
saying, it's like basically the same.
Right, it's not, there's no
Not hard.
salaries, there's no benefits, that's
No.
all here at the end
all
in terms of that.
All operational.
So it's just the operation.
I was, yeah, I knew the answer to that too. I was asking the question. Somebody has to ask the question. I want to make sure everybody understands, that this taking any little thing away isn't really making a big difference. That's the
By
thing.
your math, what would 10% take out the budget? Can you guess it?
For all the building budgets?
Yeah, I guess, because I
So
think I was
about
looking at it differently, and
$100,000.
about 100,000.
I did, I looked it up because.
Because I looked at by each department, like,
They don't equal $1 million.
It's,
It
so
was our
the-
presentation in November. I have it.
800,000.
what's included, I think athletics is probably included in there. So just the buildings themselves is 571,000
Okay, I know it's not a lot.
for high school, middle school, and.
At each department, like the technology department, special ed department, assistant superintendent, curriculum and instruction, that's what I was looking at. And if we, if each department, I kept running into like, I don't know that the special ed department can cut, the special ed was the largest one. And pupil services, that a cut would be 161,942, like, I don't see that. I see a lot of that as being like necessary, so I don't think there's room to just.
I mean, we add
Cut off
spots for-
office supply.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, we add spots for anticipated placements, which happen every year,
yeah,
which we could extract those from the budget.
yeah.
But should a kid need one, we have to pay for it. We
Yeah.
have to come up with the money anyway, but for the purposes of budgeting, those can be removed. We just have to know that should we need a placement.
Then you're, yeah, then like that.
And the other thing is, right now, how we put them in, it's either per diem or you get a slot. So what Dr. Farina is talking about, the slot cost versus a per diem rate, it's easily per day, probably close to $100. But if we get the slot, we actually are saving thousands of dollars. And I'm not sure if we have not used those slots in the last several years, because we don't get a lot.
Well, remember, the slots often are for people that have made poor choices and they're not going to be successful.
And-
Or do you want them in the mainstream? Do you want them out of that school for a specific reason?
Right.
So that everyone feels safe and comfortable and acknowledges that. So that's.
Yeah.
That's one thing, as I'm
And not
looking
all
up, I'm like, I don't
some of those,
Oh, yeah.
like Jenna.
necessarily blanket work, and Craig, you stand to 84,270, can you just stop running copies or something? No, that's what I was looking at, though, it was an idea to just give it a, and then I came up with a savings of like, if we were able to get 6% off of that, it was 774,000. So nearly 1 million, is it worth pushing for that type of cut?
In June. That's the hard part. Like, we did our building budgets in November and I realized we were
Yeah.
on board that.
Yeah,
But-
and you and I
but we
talked
did
about
it.
this, like, it wasn't like, I was here, can we do this, can we do that? No, it was presented, here's what we're doing, here's what we did last year, so. But we're here now today, and so this is
Yeah,
the time.
I just feel like, I know Peg said the same thing. Well, it's time if we need to cut it, but I just don't see any area that's gonna make the biggest difference. And I don't think there's a
I guess
total.
that's my point too, what maximum doing that, and that's a hard
It's a lot of
pill to
work.
swallow there.
Mhm.
Nearly 1 million, but not 1 million. So what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do?
Well, we can say we're gonna have it on the fund balance is what we can do.
Yeah.
And tax what we feel is appropriate to tax. Bernie, you wanna weigh in on the retired people? Thoughts on tax raising, Chris? Any of our subject here?
Sore subject, I mean, it's inevitable, whatever the number is. Like Pete said, if we don't get help from the state, it falls on our pockets. And it's a lot for you guys to comprehend, and try to be,
So would it help? I had asked Drew, if we could, one of the other districts, when I read it in the Mercury, they presented it as a cost per $100,000 of their tax increase. And I thought that it was like,
Isn't that what villages?
no, I mean an actual amount. Like if you took your tax bill and you looked at it and said, oh, my house is assessed for $200,000. So every $100,000 equals what? $100 a year?
Yeah.
I know.
The real question is, what's the increase, right? So the assessed value of $100,000 could be 150,
Right.
but if the increase of a X percent, the increase is $40, the increase is
That's right.
$20 per 100,000.
I
So if
was
you have,
operating under the Charlie Lee's per child
Gotcha.
scenario, because that makes it a little clearer. And it isn't really as bad as it looks on the surface in a yearly budget,
By the increase by 12.
$12.
No, 12 months. How much is it per month?
Well, if you
Now,
put,
now,
I have to get the
people-
number from you first. I didn't sit and figure it out.
people are already stretched and
I know that.
even $12 is a lot of money.
That's why I asked you the question. Thank you. Sorry, Drew, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
I don't know why it's not showing up in my spreadsheet, so I know I did email you.
Oh, you did. Maybe I have it.
I
think I'm ready. So.
So while you're looking for that, I'll just kind of recap what we've done for the past hour or so, talking about this. You initially proposed that we cut half dozen positions that were presented for us. We've discussed back and forth the merits of not cutting all of them. And, I think you need to just come back and figure out if we want to cut any of these positions, and then we can move forward with arriving at a number.
So at 5% millage increase, I found it. Is if the house were assessed at $100,000. At the top rate we talked about, it's $201 a year for $100,000.
increase?
Mhm.
$200 increase for 100,000.
Well, Montgomery County hadn't raised it in a long time, and then we got
That has
Really?
Montgomery County has nothing to do with this.
That's the other
That's
big
the
dig
other
in
one.
taxes,
Yeah.
so don't even bring that in.
That's
here.
the smaller house, this is the bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's where I'm trying to go with that. So if we went to 3.5, that would be $150 or $100,000 of assessment. And I don't know what the number is for total assessments. But anybody could look at their own bill, like mine's 273,000. So if we had a 5% millage increase, my taxes would go up about $500 a year. But I'm gonna say that that's a pretty high assessment now. We have a lot of area here, and this is really sad that I know this, but like I would say, because most assessments have, it's been years and years and years since Montgomery County reassessed. And they're not doing it in ever, probably. There's a lot of assessments that are 99,000. So if you take the $200, if you did 5%, I'm not saying that you do 5%. You did 5%, it's $200 a year. And that comes out to $16. Thank you. Yeah. And I see, and I understand that is also $12 a month is a lot. I get it. Yeah. I get it. You don't have to tell me. That was why I thought the middle school so hard. Not because I didn't want to have a brand new building. It was because I was worried about the cost to our citizens. That was the main thing. I'm sorry. Anyone have any thoughts on this?
I had one leftover question, Drew, the 5.5 committed, sorry, 3.5 is for retirement. What's the rest for? I don't know if you ever said that out
I
loud.
may not have.
I-
No,
I don't-
it's labeled as debt service.
You did say that too.
Yeah. I have no idea why that, we're gonna have to recommit that somewhere.
Yeah, we can
It's
figure
going
it
to
out.
cost to borrow money. That's,
No, it shouldn't be, because we can't borrow anymore.
no, I say, what is that service, the cost of borrowing
Yeah,
money?
that's the, yeah, so every year, $5.5 million of our budget goes to pay the principal and interest on our middle school. And I'm sad I was gonna say that.
So,
sorry, just a fact.
so that's
Sorry.
2 million assigned to something that we don't, that's not the.
That is a number we can't cut, basically, you know, we're always gonna have that number, and it could possibly increase over the years, I believe, could it?
Wait, what?
So this is our committed fund balance, so
It's a
Oh,
committed
it's
for
fund.
some reason, we set this aside in fund balance.
Well, what's
for-
supposed to be in there is turf fields. Every year we were supposed to be
Yeah,
putting
where the
$70,000 away for turf
So it
fields.
looks like that was in assigned fund balance, but I can't, I can almost guarantee that in the 22-23 audit, that is not there. But we can fix that moving forward at the end of this year.
Okay. I have to dig up my own budget books. I still have. it. Okay. All right. So I mean, but that's not even,
2 million.
but that's not
assigned
even
to
the,
something
yeah, but we can't take it out of assigned.
else.
We
Yeah,
can't use it to manage our fund balance.
It's in the committee.
It has to stay in there. So forget about it because it doesn't
We forget
exist.
about it and it's used for what we need to use for.
but we can reassign it.
We can reassign. it
Within that.
With the designations within the bucket.
Yes. It's a bucket we can't take out of,
We can't take anything out.
right? Unless
But
we're
we
paying
can-
for something that
We can start.
yes, we can start.
Okay.
Yes, we
Okay, but we could reassign it, sorry, I'm stuck.
yeah, so that kind of doesn't matter for this budget discussion. Well, we'll talk about, we'll make sure we put that on and we'll talk.
Again, coming back,
Yeah, sorry.
discussing percentages and everything, are we doing anything with cutting the positions, which was said
Which
earlier,
was the original
which
plan.
was the original start? And then if you decide to cut positions, that then changes these numbers slightly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, we're getting ahead of ourselves by talking.
Every 250,000 plus a potential.
Mhm.
capital.
So the question is, who wants to do what? What do you want to commit to as far as staffing?
What's the decision about?
Do you want to restate what you would,
Well, I mean,
well, both you and Trina had
I
stated
know we had,
I think we
positions.
just had one, one difference of opinion between us.
yes.
And Melanie had wanted to keep the MTSS coordinator.
No.
Oh,
No, I believe Melanie,
Melanie said she wanted
Said I wanted to take out special ed supervisor, maintenance supervisor, high school coach and TSS coach.
right, those three positions.
And that came to $345,000.
okay, sorry, you said take out maintenance supervisor, take out special education supervisor, and take out college and career coordinator?
No,
No.
high school coach and TSS.
That's one down.
Instructional coach, okay. So I had
You-
said keep in ESL teacher, keep in, keep in school psychologist, keep into classroom teachers, keep into nurses,
We're taking out this speech therapist.
and that was, yeah, that was what sorry, I kind of skipped over that. And keep in cafeteria assistant. So we were different on
Is
color.
that speech therapist?
I took out speech therapist.
So we're already over caseload. So you were just risking it up, we're not risking.
So we have to pay comp ed for every session that doesn't get fulfilled, and they're already at caseload, so we are violating. We already have, comp ed as well.
Okay.
All right, well,
In speech
I would
therapist.
go backwards then in what I said, and I would drop 2. I would drop the
special ed supervisor and the maintenance supervisor. And I think that the high school coach MTSS coordinator, I mean, there, it's kind of one or the other. I'd be okay with either one or the other.
I thought I heard, correct me staff if
I
I'm
might be wrong.
wrong, but I thought the supervisor was preferred over the, if you had to choose out of the two. I hate to put you on the
I
spot,
know.
but whoever wants to.
So
Wait.
I mean, I'm just gonna say, I mean, I'm thinking of listening, so there's 3 high school primary positions, right? College and career supervisor and MTSS coordinator. I mean, we need them all, but if I have to pick one that's the most preferred that we probably can use, it's probably the supervisor of special ed. I would say would be the priority over the other two for us right
They
now.
would be able to go out and do field assessments and visitations or whatever, if I remember correctly.
It's
from a little
just,
bit of everything.
there's too much litigation and legal components and LEA and dealing with, you know, comp ed and potential, you know, IEP problems and that's probably for me, I mean, and I'm not the only vote here, but if I have to say that the one that is probably, in my opinion, the one that would, it's gonna benefit us the most right now, it's gonna be that supervisor.
The question was between that, the supervisor and the MTSS, so between those two.
Then it's gonna be the supervisor for me, if I have to pick.
We don't want you to have to.
Yeah.
pick, but
And it's different, kind of different roles. They overlap a little, but they're not the same. It's not just comparing two of the
Right.
same thing. So that's a difficult position to be in to like make that call.
Well, and I have to say, I answered that well, but one is for the district and supports families and the legal process. The other one's directly supporting kids. So that's, sorry, Frank, I turned it over to you to,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
that is a no-win. Trina hit the nail on it.
yeah, that's true.
yeah,
So, okay. I don't, what if we left off the college and career coordinator and left off the MTSS coordinator, but kept the special ed supervisor?
I really think we do the college and career. I think that's the wave of the future. And there are things in that are so important, especially with the whole Act 339 and the artifacts and the. Leah, Keith, thoughts?
I like the career counselor, college and career counselor, and special ed supervisor.
Okay. That's okay, I forgot where it was, so my paper.
So keep the special ed supervisor.
So financially, it's just read tea leaves here. Financially, if the maintenance supervisor and the high school MTSS coach, both of those are eliminated from that chart. That can reduce the proposed final budget number. Are we putting in any savings? I wasn't able to put my finger on the Western Center. Did you?
I'm not either, because the spreadsheet that I found, I think it was the one that they emailed you, showed 2,553,000 for us. But then we have to put the debt service on top of that. So my line item had 3.3 million. And it's roughly $790,000, it looks like, debt service this year. So I'm almost showing it like no change.
Okay, so then did we decide on, have we adding any money to the governor's budget projected in or?
Thoughts?
I feel like I think it's fine to add it in. I've been following the emails we get. And
Well, so they say a projected additional 400,000, so
So
I'm not even advocating for all of that, I'm saying.
could we be
one or
conservative
two?
and
one-
add the 250,000 in, and
Yeah,
so that gives us a minus,
Yes.
I think that's easier to handle if that doesn't happen. Okay.
and that gives us a
Yeah, fine with that.
low.
So Drew, if you're able to reduce the expenditure by those two lines. And then increase revenues by
250.
250. Are you able to quickly run that millage chart? projected, that way they can see what the reductions are with the 5, 4, 5, 3, 9, 3, 5.
I mean, I think we got it
Yes.
at 5, yeah, yes.
I'd say that's,
Sorry, I
Right in the middle.
can't say that.
Yes.
I can't say.
I have full faith that Drew is going to be able to pull this off for us, and I'm just gonna fill dead time for him, so nobody's here just staring at him, putting pressure on him.
Does anyone else have any comments while we're talking? Darren, do I see something?
That's some great conversation.
That's why I didn't.
Schools need a lot of work. High school, and the roofing.
About $30 million worth of improvements.
And we have, I don't think anyone's really asking to dig into monies that have been set aside for the repair projects that we know need to be done. We've talked through those. That's not anything that I can see that's on the table to cut
We
today.
still,
No,
no, we still have a full feasibility study, we didn't even start it yet.
So,
just save that for our conversations that'll start in December probably.
yeah, well, the fear there is a
All over.
catastrophic event happens. Leave it at that language, and those go down pretty quickly,
mhm,
to
Yep.
get, even just to get up back running. And,
yeah,
Okay, so if,
you put up the screen.
yeah,
Oh, thank you.
Jim, can I?
I'm running out of everything close here.
Go you.
Okay, so the baseline. It's just about 4.2 million of fund balance to use with a zero tax increase,
0 millage.
0 millage increase,
Right.
thank you. So a 5% would need to use, 5% mill increase would need to use about 2 million in fund balance.
And we said that was about a 6.58% total.
Correct.
Up.
for Burris.
Yeah, I do have it. Yes, right. 6.6, 6.8. 4.5% would need to use 2.
Can I stop you?
Sure.
Why are they different?
They are different
I'm sorry.
because the average assessment is different. For a Bergstone versus a Montgomery. That's the only difference.
I don't think there's any difference. We're all subject to the same sub ratio, no matter what county it's in. And they all
Yeah.
have the 75%. The calculation's the same.
It's the average assessment, because I did have them separated. I probably wouldn't have to.
Sorry, technicalities here.
Well, yeah, it started with the median, because the median was different, because you get that from Berks versus Montgomery, but then we moved over to average, which then I probably could have just combined them.
I kept thinking about that.
Yeah.
Is it different? Shouldn't be. So then we will over? Yes. What? Yep. There you go. That was it.
So then a 4.5% would use 2.2 of fund balance and be just over 6%. 3.9 mil increase would use 2.46 fund balance and be just over 5.3, 5.6. And 3.5 mil increase would use 2.6 million of fund balance and be right around 5%.
Oh, it's better. Still ugly, but it's better.
That does include 250,000 in BEF,
Basic education.
basic education fund, and then a reduction of 105 for the MTSS and 80,000 for the maintenance supervisor.
And plus 250,000 for the budget, for the governor's budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you said that. Okay. I even said it out loud.
Still learning.
It's been a long day.
I just want to make one correction for the record. I wrote down the wrong thing in my notes. I did want speech therapists. Those top 5 were non-negotiable to me, so sorry for my
No,
miscommunication.
We didn't take them out,
Right, take them. Okay.
just the two.
Anything palatable to anyone so we can, go to the full board on the 20th?
So just to clarify, it's coming out of the committee, the 4 members, we need 3
Yes.
of the 4 to
Yes.
have a vote to move something forward.
Yes.
Do we need to come up with a number? Okay.
Yep. Yes, we do.
I would need Keith, since you've been through this many times, can you give us some guidance as to where you think it should land?
I think. All right, I'm gonna land at 3.9, and that breaks my heart because I don't really do that. As it broke my heart last year, but again, as I keep harping, our cyber charter schools are murdering us.
Well, that surprised me because I was thinking the same thing because as I said a long time ago during this meeting, about an hour ago, lost revenue, missed revenue. If we cut it too much, we're just gonna put ourselves back in the same situation again next year and have to go through all this all over again and even more in depth possibly. I was thinking 3.9.
Great minds.
I wouldn't say that, but
Hey. Leah, Trina?
go with whatever your heart and mind
Yep.
direct you to, is the advice I'll give you.
Yeah.
We're thinking we might get a little more from the state and the hopes that we can move around some funds possibly, or not have some of we've over budgeted a little enough that we feel, that we put it in, that we thought that would be a comfortable place to be. I prefer to go with the 3.5 millage. I'd like to go lower, but I don't want to get between 2.9 and 3.07. Like, that's not a huge difference to have to make up. So I prefer to go with 3.5 millage. And keep the positions that we talked about, all but the two, I'm very.
So the 3.9 Drew, what would be the actual tax increase be?
Instead of 3.9.
0.9 millage.
Yeah, 3.9.
Yeah, 5.3 or 5.4.
5.4, and it's 3.5. Oh, but it's close.
Yeah.
What if you threw 3.7 in there?
Five.
5.15.
What was that?
3.7.
3.7, 5.5.
5.15.
Have that spreadsheet that you found with figuring out how much per $100,000 of assessment. Did you?
That's assuming.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, so that's assuming it's $100,000 assessed value this year and next year for both any property in Berks and any property in Montgomery County. So that's why it's coming out 5.15 for both.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Didn't
sorry.
you say 3.5 for Trina's was 5.19%?
4.93 was what he said.
Yep, looks like 93. With a $2.6 million deficit. On that one. So to put that into perspective. So what we need is a big property to go into a lot of houses that are over 55, so that they don't bring us any kids, but they give us lots more revenue. There you go, that's my solution.
Put that in the minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, starting at 550,000.
At least, yeah, on a like a tenth of an acre.
I've been here 50 years and the cost of the houses, I mean, it's like, no, every time a development's built, I understand that labor and materials is increasing. The farmer wants all the bucks he can get.
I don't blame them.
I don't need it, especially if the kids don't want to farm.
Exactly. All right, so, Leah,
I'm doing here.
I know. Well, we're on the committee, so. Peg, you have any input since I didn't ask you?
Well, I actually agree with Trina. I'd love to see the 3.5. And I wish there was some guarantee of, when this is all said and done, of seeing improved student outcomes and accountability.
Thanks, Peg.
Sarah, did you want to add anything? You're here too.
Well, that's why, yeah, that's
Oh,
why.
you're
Yeah.
hiding back there.
Yeah,
she's
hiding.
hiding.
Okay. Liz, any input?
Oh, Liz is hiding.
Yep.
I don't know where else you can cut, like. Are there any extra programs that we don't need that are a lot, that are up for yearly?
That was it. Sounds good. The one. And that was actually in this year's budget. It was already in this year's budget. Sorry, I'm sorry this is taking so long. This is not an easy decision,
I
period.
mean, it's worth the time though, like, take
Sure
your time
is.
now, and then, we've done it, and we've exhausted, we've asked for input. I mean, anybody else, want to speak into this? I'd like to exhaust it today, so.
So we're gonna have to have the same conversation again with the full board.
It's true,
So just so you know,
but at least we will come in strong with something,
that was that's the idea.
so.
But everyone's here.
Right,
Yeah,
everybody is actually here, so.
Yep. Emily, did you
Oh,
have any-
okay.
Okay.
we have a 3.9, we have two 3.9s and a 3.5. Sorry, Leah. Oh, I have that.
Okay. Well, did we do a 3.7, like, in the middle of? 3.7 would come to 5.15, if I remember correctly, which is up on the board, and would be roughly 2.5 something mil.
2.52 million out of fund balance.
And I think 3.5 is already high, like it broke my heart last year to hear some of our seniors saying, I'm gonna have to move, like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and I know to some of us, it's like, what, $250, but for some people, it's hard all around, but.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure is.
It is hard, but we also have to have an educated public. And when our kids were in school, they, fixed income people were paying for their education, and, we're part of the community, and then our students are part of the community, and we need that educated public. None of us like taxes. I certainly, I get hit from all sides for taxes.
Each generation, pays for the next generation, it's been very slow.
We do see some outcomes, and it's, helping this population of students by putting that position in. My struggle right now is 3.9 to 3.5. Because we're going to have to, we have to have the tax increase. And, you said, Keith, you said if we did 3.7, if we did a compromise between the two, then what's
Would
that?
come out to about $157,000 or $157 per 100,000.
Okay.
I think I'd rather not here to say that.
So I'll go with, 3.9 or split the difference.
I personally think we just stick with the 3.9. Got to pay. That's what we need to pay.
I know, I feel it.
The committee says 3.9.
Now, just because we as a committee put something to them, now the full board can then discuss this all over again.
Yep.
In a week and a half from now and come up with something completely different. Up or down, but it will not be 6.7 whatever. You know, when we published our number last month, that is a number that we could not go over. Okay? Contrary to some opinion out there, once we publicize a number for our proposed final budget, you know, we can't raise those taxes. We can go down, but we cannot go up. And right now, we're stuck between 3.5 and 3.7. I would recommend we take this to the board at 3.9. And if they want to raise it or lower it a little bit more, as a majority, let them take it there.
So the only logistical problem with that is we will have all the resolutions. I'll have all the resolutions prepared for
3.9.
3.9.
Why do I feel like we didn't have the number in there before?
Cal does not want us to have blanks on the board agenda.
I know that.
I mean,
but
if it's changed at the table, if it changes at the table,
Then we'll change.
then it changes. The question is the resolution is signed, so, right?
Yeah.
And the preparation, so. If it's a matter of signing things, I'm sure we could have multiple copies with these 3 sets of numbers if needed. I mean, you're close enough that if you have to come by the next week to sign something,
That was fine.
it'll be fine, if that changes, but. Move forward with 3.9, and
Yeah.
if the board decides to,
Well-
lower it or raise it, we can adjust.
Is that good? True?
Yeah, we're just working through the tax bill issue, so I mean, we would have the millage that we would have to get in there. Yeah,
Yeah, the tax bills go out July 1st. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah, typically.
Well, if the board makes a decision to lower it or raise it, then we'll adjust. We'll have to look at this. So, we'll plan to throw in 3.9 based upon the discussion, the recommendation for the committee. We have what we need to complete the agenda.
yeah, if anything, we'll have to delay the tax rate. I would think we would have to, but we would just have to see how it worked out.
Okay. All right,
3.9.
3.9. Oh, I know, I just realized.
You mind if I ask the
No.
administrator to leave?
You can go home. Thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Really
very much.
appreciate your input on it.
Good night.
Howard, Mr. Howard.
No, not you, Mr. Howard.
We're still meeting.
Yeah, very.
Of course, he was leading this time.
You try.
I'll step back.
You don't have to stuff out. All right, move on. No old business.
No, this is just a regular meeting now. There's
Yeah,
nothing
this is just
complicated.
the rest of the way.
No.
We still have stuff on our.
They were just
agenda.
here to give input on the budget.
All right, information.
Yeah, so I think we can,
Yes.
yeah, so just, following up, we needed to go out to bid for the diesel and the gasoline. Well, sorry, we didn't need to go out to bid, we needed to lock it in. And the committee here last month said, yes, lock it in, if it's under budget, do it. It ticked up a little bit, but then it came back down. So this is the best that we could get right here is 260, about 261, per gallon.
And we both the same.
Yeah,
Guys, like,
that's not, no, that must be a typo.
when people usually work. then
More,
gas.
Yeah, I'll correct this,
Okay.
before we leave here.
That's one in the wrong spot.
The gas should be
No.
lower.
Yeah, right, gotta have that.
That was really good.
We're gonna go over that budget again. One more time.
The gas number should be lower.
Right.
And then
You
the
had
natural
one
gas,
fifty last time.
I'm sorry?
You had at 149, I think, or 152. It was one.
Yeah, that's when you're shooting so far.
Okay, head towards it before next week.
Yeah, yeah. I won't report it, just let me know what it really is.
Yeah.
Gas was 219, sorry.
Was that on the last agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think until we locked it in, it's,
219.
219
it
for
veered,
gas.
it veered a little bit off of that, but, I'll find it, I'll certainly let you know.
Yeah, 19 for gas, 254
Yeah,
for
for
diesel.
diesel, yeah, so it's not that, but it's,
It's not that,
okay. Got
It's
but it's close.
Okay. Fair enough.
The natural gas bid was complete also. It came in pretty much in line with what they said from what the prior few years have been. So I learned a lot about this. This is just a payment for the transportation of the natural gas. When we are buying it, we're buying it at the NYMEX price, which is the floating price. But this is just the lock in the transportation of that natural gas. So
And that's per unit, is it measured by gallons or?
yeah, it's the DTH is the decatherms.
Yeah, I can't remember what the measurement is.
Yeah.
Some kind of volume.
I'll ask Steven, who's that, we used to work for town.
Okay.
So that was all, they were, the consortium that we're in recommended, accepting the bids that were received. So we were able to lock that in, which according to them it was in line with the last few bids that they've had, which, so that seemed like a good thing. And then just committee dates are there.
Yeah,
We have to change the
yeah, we have
September.
to change the first one because I'm in the Vancouver.
So the options that we talked about were going up to the September
10th.
September 9th, there is a 5 PM Zoom exec session Zoom JOC meeting. So if you want to do 6:30, I think that would give enough time for,
Are you sure? We do 7, you could do 7 if you want, or 6.
I'm not there, Keith, you were there at the JOC. That first meeting is Zoom at 5 o'clock on September 9th. We're looking for a new date for this finance committee meeting, so how long do those JOCs last?
Could be hour and a half at the most.
So that would,
So
that would be,
That's all
or,
Put on there, it's the beginning of the year, so.
yeah, or you go the other way, if you want to stick on Monday to 23rd. And as Drew recommended, we do a 5 o'clock finance, 6 o'clock extracurricular, and 7 o'clock. So,
Fine.
I mean, just knock it all out in one night with those three.
I'm okay with that.
That's fine.
Yeah, we should.
I'm a big fan of the more in one night than
Yeah,
less nights out.
Yeah.
Personally,
Alright, so we'll do it the 23rd
23rd at 5 PM.
at 5 P.M.
And then the rest of the meetings are the same.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah, those will be on there, yeah.
Yep, I'm just gonna be away on this. Yeah. Well.
And so the other meeting on the other meeting on the 16th was what, policy at 5?
Okay. Yeah, I don't even have the new ones in mind
Well,
yet.
Policy at 5, yeah. So. That works out for me, so you was talking.
There you go. Oh, that's right.
Okay.
It's fine, it's all in here.
Are they going to be adjusted on
Monday,
the website?
Yeah.
Is that a meeting?
It's just one we do, yeah, we'll get it adjusted. I don't even think it was posted.
I'm not even sure whether they're on there.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
We'll get this one.
Yeah.
On the chart.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, public comments? No. Okay. Committee member comments? No.
Thank you all.
I just want to thank you for helping us smoothly through the process. It's really been helpful and, you know, we have a lot of questions and, you know, especially the historical information too, is like really helpful in making some of these decisions. Tough ones that they are.
I think this is the process. This is the process.
Yeah.
It takes time. So I mean, we welcome your questions and aren't offended or you take it back. This is what it is. And I
Yeah.
think exactly going through it for the first time, but even 7th time or whatever else,
Mhm.
tell us what you need and whatever the decisions are made here, we move on. It's passed and we move on and manage. So I know some people here were here with bated breath. They say, hey, guys, listen, there's questions that we can't answer, and you need to be here. This is them putting their front foot forward, so.
And I appreciate that.
Sorry, Leah, as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Drew.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, none of it's easy. This is really hard. Because you have to balance between getting a good education and getting them what they need. And not bankrupting everyone. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, all right. Oh, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Third.
Aye. Thank you, Evan. Thank you, Evan. Thank you. Yes, yep. Next week.
Next week.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one that you guys landed